Good evening, my dear friends. Tonight I want to speak to you of something so simple, so quietly powerful, that I am almost afraid to tell you of it. For I know that the moment you understand it, you will never again be able to lay your head on the pillow at night and surrender the day to what merely seemed to happen. There is a practice I have spoken of in halls from Los Angeles to New York to that small lecture room in San Francisco where the rain would not stop falling, and yet, of all the laws I have shared with you, this one remains the most neglected. Sit with me. Lean in. Let me show you what it is. There is a man in this great city tonight who is preparing for bed. He has lived through a difficult day. He was spoken to harshly by a man whose opinion he values. A door he had hoped would open to him was closed firmly in his face. A letter he waited for did not arrive. And as he draws back the covers and lays himself down, he goes over the day in his mind. And in going over it, he confirms it. He gives it permanence. He nails each painful event into the wood of his own future. He calls this honesty. He calls this facing facts. And tomorrow, my friends, tomorrow will be built upon what he has just rehearsed. In another room, perhaps just down the same street, a second man lives through the same kind of day. The same harshness, the same closed door, the same waiting silence. But this man, before he sleeps, does something altogether different. He goes back into each painful scene of the day, and he revises it. He sees the harsh man speaking to him kindly with respect. He sees the door swinging open. He sees the letter in his hand, and he reads it, and it brings him news he longed for. He does this not as a daydream, not as a wish, but as though he is reliving the day as it should have been, and he goes to sleep in the warmth of these revised events. And tomorrow, my friends, tomorrow is built for him too, but it is built upon a foundation entirely different. Now, why should this be? Why should the simple act of rearranging the day in imagination after the events have passed have any bearing whatsoever on what comes next? It seems absurd. It offends the mind that has been trained to bow before what it calls fact. And yet I tell you, after a lifetime of testing this practice and watching others test it, that there is no exercise more potent than this one. It is the technique I would teach you first, if I could teach you only one. Some have called it the pruning shears, for with it you cut away the diseased branches of the day before they can bear their bitter fruit in your tomorrow. I call it simply revision. Let me tell you of a young woman I met after a lecture in New York in 1947. Her name was Margaret, and she could not have been more than 30 years old. She approached me in the back of the hall, her eyes red, her hands trembling. She told me that she had quarreled that very afternoon with her sister, a quarrel of the kind that families have, where words are spoken that ought never to have been spoken, where wounds are opened that have been festering for years. The two sisters had not spoken on good terms for nearly 7 months. This particular quarrel, Margaret feared, had ended things between them forever, and she stood before me weeping, asking what she could do. Now, my friends, the world would have given her practical advice. Telephone your sister, write her a letter, send flowers, apologize. The world would have her go out into the field of effects and try to repair what had been broken. But I asked her instead a single question. I said, "Margaret, what would you have wished had happened this afternoon, instead of what did happen?" She looked at me as though I had spoken in a foreign tongue. I said again, "Tell me in detail what you would have wished." And slowly, hesitatingly, she began to describe a different afternoon. A telephone call in which her sister spoke to her warmly. A long conversation. Laughter, the mention of a coming visit. Forgiveness so easy it required no words. I told Margaret to go home that night, and before she slept, to enter that scene and live it. Not to think about it, to live it. To hear her sister's voice on the line. To feel the phone in her hand. To feel her own face soften into a smile. To repeat this scene over and over until it became in her mind the thing that had actually happened that afternoon. And then to fall asleep in the conviction that it had so happened. I told her that the quarrel was now to be regarded as a dream from which she had awakened, and the revised scene was to be regarded as the truth. 3 days later, I received a letter. Margaret's sister had telephoned her, without prompting, without warning. The conversation had unfolded almost word for word as Margaret had revised it. The two were to meet for lunch at the end of that week. Now, I do not tell you this to amaze you. I tell you this because Margaret did exactly what any of you can do tonight, and she was given the same proof that any of you may be given. She did not change her sister by going out and persuading her. She changed the sister by changing the day, and the new day produced a new sister. Now mark this carefully, for it is the very heart of what I am sharing with you. The world that you experience tomorrow is not produced by the world you experience today. It is produced by the impression you carried within you as you fell asleep. If you carried within you the impression of harshness, of closure, of disappointment, that impression is the seed, and tomorrow will be its harvest. But if you carried within you the impression of warmth, of openness, of receiving, then that impression is the seed, and tomorrow will be its harvest. The day, as it appeared to your senses, has nothing whatever to do with the matter. The senses are only a report. They report what was. They do not determine what shall be. Imagination is the gateway. Imagination is what shapes the world tomorrow morning. And revision is the simple, ancient, almost forgotten art of carrying the right impression into sleep. It is not denial. I am not asking you to pretend that the painful event did not occur. I am asking you to recognize that, having occurred, it now exists only as memory. And memory, my friends, is the most malleable substance in the universe. It can be revised. It must be revised, for if you do not revise it, you confirm it, and what you confirm tonight, you must inherit tomorrow. There are 3 things I would have you understand about this practice, and each of them, if you grasp it, will save you years of unnecessary suffering. The first is this: nothing in your day is too small to revise. Most people imagine that revision is for the grand wounds, the loss of a job, the breaking of an engagement, the death of a friendship. And yes, it is for these. But it is also for the petty discourtesies, the moment of impatience, the curt reply, the forgotten kindness, the small humiliation in a shop. These tiny scratches on the surface of the day are not nothing. They are seeds, and seeds, however small, grow into trees. The man who revises only his catastrophes and ignores his irritations is a poor gardener. He pulls up the great weeds and lets the small ones spread. Revise everything, my friends. Revise the rude clerk into a kind one. Revise the missed train into a train you caught with ease. Revise the cold glance from a stranger into a warm nod. The garden of tomorrow will thank you for every single weed you uproot tonight. I know what some of you are thinking. You are thinking, but Neville, this seems dishonest. This seems like a deliberate refusal to face what is real. And to you I say, what is real? Is the harsh word real? It existed for a moment in the air between 2 people, and then it dissolved. What remains of it now? Only the impression you have made of it within yourself. That impression is yours. You made it. You can unmake it. You can remake it. The world you call real is nothing more than the precipitate of impressions you have allowed to harden within you. Soften them tonight. Reshape them tonight. And the world will reshape itself in the morning to match. The second thing I would have you understand is this: the feeling is the seal. It is not enough to mentally rearrange the events of the day as one might rearrange furniture in a room. You must enter the revised scene with feeling. You must feel relieved that the quarrel ended kindly. You must feel grateful that the door opened. You must feel the warmth in your chest, the lightness in your shoulders, the quiet smile on your face. Without that feeling, you have only thought, and thought without feeling impresses nothing. Feeling is the secret. I have said this to you many times in many lectures, and I shall say it again tonight. Feeling is the seal that presses the new impression into the wax of the subconscious. Without the seal, the impression vanishes by morning. With the seal, it endures, and from it your tomorrow is born. So when you lie down tonight, do not merely think the revised scene. Live it. Be in it. Hear the voice that should have been heard. See the face that should have been seen. Feel the relief, the warmth, the gladness, and carry that feeling, that very feeling, down into sleep with you. Let it be the last thing in your awareness as consciousness fades. That is the moment of impression. That is the moment in which all of tomorrow is being written by you, whether you know it or not. Most men write tomorrow with the ink of today's disappointment. I am asking you tonight to take up a different pen. The third thing I would have you understand is this: revision is not a single act. It is a practice. It is a discipline. The man who revises one painful day and then returns the next night to his old habit of rehearsing his disappointments will see no lasting change. The world will revert to what he has impressed upon it most often. But the man who makes revision the last act of every single evening, who refuses to let any day end in its raw, unedited form, that man will discover within a few weeks that his life has begun to feel different. The harsh encounters grow rarer. The doors open more often than they close. The letters arrive. He himself cannot quite say when it began, but he knows that something has shifted, and what has shifted is not the world. What has shifted is the impression he carries within him at the moment of sleep. I am reminded now of a gentleman I knew in 1952, a businessman in Los Angeles by the name of Thomas. He came to me at a low moment. His business was failing. A partnership had collapsed. He was convinced that a particular client, a man of considerable influence, had spoken ill of him in their professional circle, and that doors which had once been open were now firmly shut. Each night Thomas would lie awake replaying these closed doors, hearing again in his mind the words this client had supposedly spoken. He was, without knowing it, hammering them deeper into his future with every rehearsal. I asked Thomas to do one thing, and one thing only, for 30 nights. I asked him to revise his day before sleep, and most especially to revise his standing with this particular client. To imagine that the client had in fact praised him warmly. To hear, in his mind, the kind words being spoken about him in rooms he had never entered. To feel the doors swinging open rather than slamming shut. To feel respected. To feel sought after. And then to fall asleep in that feeling. For 26 nights, nothing changed. The outer world remained as cold and closed as it had ever been. Thomas wrote to me in some discouragement at the end of the 3rd week. I wrote back and said, persist. The seed is in the ground. You cannot dig it up to see whether it has sprouted. Continue the practice. On the 28th day, my friends, Thomas received a telephone call. The very client he had been revising had recommended him, without solicitation, without explanation, to a much larger firm. Within a fortnight, Thomas had signed a contract that would carry his business through the next several years. And here is the detail I want you to mark, for it tells you that the law was at work and not mere chance. When Thomas received that telephone call, he was not shocked. He was not amazed. He felt, as he later told me, entirely natural, as though he had been expecting it, as though it were merely the outer confirmation of what had already become inwardly true for him. That feeling of naturalness, my friends, that quiet, almost casual recognition when the manifestation arrives, that is the signature of a law fulfilled. Shock and amazement belong to the man who has stumbled into something. Naturalness belongs to the man who has impressed it. Now let me tell you simply and clearly how to do this practice tonight. You need not wait. You need not prepare. You need only your bed, your pillow, and a few quiet minutes before sleep. When you lie down, do not begin by reviewing the day in its raw form. That is the old habit, and it must be broken. Instead, ask yourself a single question. What in this day that I have just lived would I have wished had been different? Pick one event. Do not try to revise the entire day in one evening. Pick the event that pressed upon you most heavily, the conversation that wounded you, the door that closed, the news that disappointed you. Hold that single event before your mind for a moment. Then ask yourself, how would I have wished it to unfold? Not vaguely, specifically. If it was a conversation, what words would have been spoken? If it was a closed door, who would have opened it and what would lie beyond? If it was bad news, what news would you have received instead? Construct the revised scene with the same precision you would give to a memory of something that actually occurred. Make it short, a single scene, perhaps a minute or two long. Now enter the scene. Close your eyes and be there. Hear the words being spoken in the kindly tone you wished for. See the face. Feel the air of the room. Feel the relief, the warmth, the gladness. Stay in the scene until the feeling is full and natural, until it feels less like imagination and more like memory. And then, holding that feeling, allow yourself to drift towards sleep. Do not try to think any further. Do not analyze. Do not wonder how it will work. Simply carry the feeling down into sleep as a man carries a sleeping child to its bed, gently, without disturbing it. That is all. There is no more to the practice than this. Do it tonight. Do it tomorrow night. Do it every night. And before a fortnight has passed, you will have stories of your own to tell. Stories that will perhaps sound to others as fantastic as the stories I have shared with you tonight sound to those who have not yet tested them. Now, my friends, allow me to lift this teaching to its highest level before we part. You are not here in this body, in this short span of years, in order to passively receive whatever the world hands to you. You were never meant to be a creature of the day's events. The day's events do not happen to you, they happen through you. They are the outpicturing of impressions you have already made, and they are themselves only the raw material from which you shape what comes next. The hand that shapes is your imagination. The clay is your memory. And the moment of shaping is that quiet, sacred moment just before sleep, when the senses fall away and you stand alone with what you carry within you. The man who lies down tonight rehearsing his disappointments is not a victim of his day. He is its author. He is writing tomorrow in the ink of his own discouragement. The man who lies down tonight rewriting his day in the warmth of what should have been is also its author, but he is writing tomorrow in a different ink, and tomorrow will read accordingly. There is no fairness or unfairness in this. There is only law. The same law that buries the man who rehearses his pain raises the man who revises it. Remember then this one image as you lay your head down tonight. Two men in this great city, on the same street, beneath the same sky, lived through the same kind of difficult day. One went to sleep confirming it. One went to sleep rewriting it. The morning will find them in the same world by appearance, but they are no longer in the same world at all. One has sealed his tomorrow to the past. The other has freed his tomorrow from the past. And the only difference between them was a single quiet act, performed in the dark, with no witness but their own imagination. Be the second man tonight, my friends. Be the second woman. Take up the pruning shears and walk through the garden of your day. Cut what should not be allowed to grow. Plant what you would wish to harvest. And go to sleep in the warmth of a day better than the one your senses reported. Trust the law. The law has never failed a single soul who tested it honestly. It will not fail you. Good evening, my friends. I shall see you again in the next